So my name's Nathan, and we're going to be doing some Hermetic alchemical meditations today. Basically, it is Qi Gong, and the way that I like to use this is that we end up meditating on the energetic substrate itself. Now there's many different permutations and layers of density and refinement, etc., to what energy we're using. What we'll be working with today is a coarser life force. It is the easiest to tune into, which is why we're going to use it. Now, why meditate, use an object like the energy as opposed to watching the thoughts or watching the breath, or looking at a particular meta feeling like loving kindness, etc., is that we want to allow for a permeability to occur. And thoughts, if we're watching the thoughts, you find over time of a lot of watching your thoughts that those exist within a particular energetic bandwidth. And once the form of the thought breaks apart, there's a bunch of weird stuff that's there before it forms into a thought form, which is why it's called a thought form, because it has formed into a thought that we can recognize as a thought. But underneath that, there's energy. If you're working with an emotional object of meditation, the same thing. There's a shape that when energy passes through it to us might mean anger or lust or this or that or the other thing, right? And then once you've sat for a while or whatever you're doing, you start to notice that those shapes are merely containers for an element, which is a permutation of energy in one direction or another, okay? And if you're meditating on the body, right, the sensations of the body, if you do like exercises, like mental training exercises that are sort of prerequisites for Vipassana, like body scans and that kind of stuff, what you notice is that there's all this stuff you can feel, right? But all of that stuff is formed, we could say like formed expressions or interpretations of sensation. So you start to break that apart, and what does it become? There's a flux and flow of energy. So if you're meditating on the breath, you breathe in, you breathe out. Over time, you start to feel and observe that that energy itself breathes in, it breathes out, it moves. So all of this is sort of working our way around one basic point, which is that if we focus on the form of something, it grows. We strengthen it. What we touch with the mind grows, right? There's a whole lot of energy behind focus, which is why you typically would, be very cognizant of what it is that you're focusing on, right? So what you touch with the mind grows. If you're focusing on the body, you will strengthen your relationship to the body. You will also make it that much more potentially difficult to relinquish the barriers or the blockages in the body. Same with the mind, right? Same with the emotions, right? You focus the mind on a thing and you strengthen it. This is why when, you're going about your day-to-day stuff, or, you have a partner at home or something, and they go, hey, you know what your problem is? And you go, right? You brace. They pressurize that thing. And grandparents seem to understand this the best because they don't have to deal with actually taking care of the kid. So they can kind of look at the kid and just from a very open-minded standpoint. I've noticed that a lot of grandparents tend to tap that side of things very well. So by working with the energy, we are working with something that passes through the body, passes through the emotions, passes through the mind, all those different shapes and forms, and is a very, very quick accelerant when it comes to working more formlessly and allowing for stuff to move in a quite profound way without needing to attach to our super special personal experience of, how we're special with this trauma and that blockage and this and that. One of the things that holds people back a lot is pride in whatever our issues are, right? So by working with the energy, we can kind of bypass a degree of that. You're still gonna have to deal with yourself, but you'll have a nice doorway to allow stuff to move without pressurizing it specifically with your attention. Okay, any questions before we begin? No? Okay, so sitting upright spine. For the portion of the body here, we want to have a stretch, an enlivened posture, that which is alive and, say, juvenile in the sense of young. It is resilient. It can bend and return back to form. So it's that elasticity, which is a representation of essentially youth, that pliability. So straightening the spine, palms facing each other, stretching the fingers open just as the spine is enlivened. The palms are enlivened, the fingers are enlivened. Right. Soft stretch, not too hard, not too soft. Relaxed, full breaths in and out through the nose. We're going to take our attention and place it in the space between the two palms, right in the center between the two palms. Breathing into that space, softly stretching into that space, attending with the attention to that space, with the awareness. Observing connection from the fingertips, through the top of the head, through the tips of the toes. As you breathe, breath washes in, washes out. And slowly, very slowly, as you exhale, we're going to softly squeeze the hands a little closer together, maintaining that stretch. As we inhale, allowing the hands to be moved slightly apart. This movement might be a couple inches, a little more, a little less. Keeping the attention on that space in the center between the two palms. Observe any differences between when the hands are further apart and when they can dance a little closer together. And now squeezing the hands a little closer together, until they're maybe 6 inches apart. And holding them there as you breathe full, relaxed, natural breaths. Feel that energy, pressure building between the two palms. And now turning small circles, so you can, if you need to, open your eyes, see what I'm doing here. And turning small circles. Observe the difference. Differentiation is the key to building awareness. You might notice that the hands begin to turn these circles on their own. Some locations might feel like the hands are being attracted, some like they're being repelled. And as this circuit starts to build, they might start circling faster, slower. The purpose is to perceive as you breathe, the attention and the space between the two palms, creating these circles. The more connected we are, the more you might notice these small circles reflecting through the entirety of the body, creating vortex up the spine, spirals through the toes. And stilling the circles, palms facing each other. Breathing into that space, stretching into that space. And slowly take one hand. We're going to raise it up. And slowly swiping back down. Becoming aware of any difference in perception between when the palms are facing space and when they are facing each other. One hand swiping up and down, the other remains still. Stretch generates energy. As that energy saturates, it creates stretch. And reversing the still and moving hand. If you like, when the palms are facing each other, you can stop for a moment and tap that ball. Maintain your stretch, maintain your posture. Sustain the focus on the energy so that energy can build. And palms facing each other. Aware of that live buzz, that tingle, fullness of the energy. And we're going to take the location from the space between the hands and shift it within the solar plexus. Observe any changes. As the location of the attention, the location of that energy begins to build within the solar plexus. That fullness that was between the palms is now within the body. And from the solar plexus, we're going to begin expanding the shape of the mind from the solar plexus. It's going to expand outwards until your mind occupies a sphere, torus around the body, about an arm's length in each direction. Forward, backward, left, right, up and down. And now shrinking the space of the mind back into the solar plexus. Observe the difference. And expanding back out through the body, through the flesh, through the skin, beyond, out through the skin, encompassing. Just feel an arm's length in each direction. And now, as we inhale, we're going to shrink that space back to the solar plexus. And as we exhale, expanding that space back through the field. Every inhalation, drawing that life force in through the solar plexus. And every exhalation, expanding that space, washing that life force out through the field. Sustaining that live connection from the tips of the toes, through the tips of the fingers, through the top of the head. As we inhale, the life force washes in. As we exhale, this life force washes out. With each breath, washing in, washing out. And once you've connected the life force to the movement of the breath, you're welcome to rest the hands. They can be palms up on the knees or palms down or any other mudra that you like. But what we want to avoid is to collapse. Right? You're also welcome to maintain with the palms facing each other. It's up to you. Okay? The life force washes in, washes out. And very softly now, observing any movement of or stagnations within the mind, within your perception, your view, habitual forms, shapes, patterns of thought. And as we breathe, we wash the life force through this layer of mind, washing in, washing out. Enlivening, focusing, invigorating, cleansing. Balancing and harmonizing. Washing in through this layer of mind and washing back out through the field. And softly becoming aware of any membranes of stagnancy, these barriers that separate the free flowing movement of the life force. Observe these barriers, these membranes. And releasing them into the life force. As they release, those areas are able to be permeated by, filled by, saturated with the life force. Tensions dissolve into the energy itself. Sustaining focus, sustaining posture, awareness, release. And very softly moving the attention to the emotional forms, energies, emotional body. Just observe as we observe. The life force washes in, washes out. aware of the shapes, these shapes that give meaning, emotional meaning and restriction to that energy. Observe these containers, these compartments. And as we breathe, dissolving these containers, these shapes, these forms, as they dissolve, those spaces are filled, saturated with energy, supported. Tending to the flow of this energy linked with the breath now. As the energy washes through, harmonizing, balancing, vitalizing. And very softly tuning the awareness to the body. Any physical discomfort of any kind, these barriers, movement, these densities, stagnation, excesses, deficiencies. Aware of these barriers, this compression, these shapes, these forms. And feel, observe as the energy moves in, it will pressurize these barriers, these stagnations, discomforts. That's normal. Observe those barriers and releasing them, surrendering them into the sustaining life force. The mind, the habitual mind, will try to grasp again and again at where these pains might have been and to assert a shape once again. Continue to dissolve, allowing these areas to fill, to be supported by and through the life force. As it washes in and washes back out through the field. And placing the attention on the skin, from the tips of the toes, through the top of the head, through the tips of the fingers. Observe the confines of the skin, where internal meets external. And dissolving this into the life force, into the field. Any perception of in front and behind, of left and right, disappear, floating within the life force. Any perceptions differentiating above and below, disappear. Aware as a field of life force washing in through its own center and washing back out. as one with this ebb and flow of energy, as this ebb, as this flow. More and more life force begins to join with this movement of energy. This field fluxing in and out. This breathing, living field. Very softly as this field breathes. The influx of life force grows brighter and brighter with each breath, brighter and brighter. Washing in through its own center, washing out through the periphery of its field. As it washes in, drawing in more and more life force, bright light. And that life force, when it washes out, contained by the periphery of the field. Aware of the freedom as this field of light to perceive, think, feel, act freely, sincerely. Back to the field as one. Light, buoyant. Freedom of movement of the mind within the light, supported by and liberated, invigorated by this light. harmony, easy balance, harmony, joy, equanimity. And as this breathing, fluxing sphere of light, aware of the freedom of the emotion, to feel with sincerity, without constriction. From this space of life force, of vitality, of resilience, strength, of light. And joyous light and humor, with recognition underlying the flux of emotion. Dance in and around equanimity. And this playfulness of this field of light, washing, dancing through the body, enlivening, invigorating, vitalizing, calming, rejuvenating, playful, free, sincere integration of action, of movement, of posture. Releasing the confines of habitual meaning. Playful flux, ebb and flow as this field of light, light of life force, And raising the palms, facing each other, stretching through the fingers, stretching through the palms. Observe that stretch connecting through the arms, through the back, through the legs, through the toes. And from this space, this field of light, life force, we're going to begin slowly bringing the hands closer and closer together. As we do so, condensing this light, this life force in through the flesh. The hands get closer and closer together, condensing this energy through the skin, through the blood vessel, through the muscles, the connective tissue, ligaments, tendons. Through the nervous tissue, the organ, through all the fluids of the body, hormonal system, through the bones, closer and closer, closer and closer. And in through the marrow of the bones, this internal life liquid, in through the marrow, bringing the palms together, the fingertips touch, sustain the awareness on that energy, condensed, glowing bright within the bone. And you can bring the hands to the heart center or to the brow. Observe that light, that pressure, that energy. And from here, internally, expressing gratitude. As we do so, releasing that light, expanding it out. Gratitude, expanding that light out further and further. That light directed to and through gratitude. Excess light flowing out. Everything required internally, sustaining strength, health, harmony, vitality, resilience. Flow and synchronicity. And at your own pace, whenever you're ready, slowly opening the eyes, returning to the body. Take as much time as you need. And any very light, sweeping motions from the center through the extremities, right? tops, bottoms of the arms, right, down the legs. Good. That's it. Yeah, that's the idea. Good. Okay. Okay, so a little bit about that as you regain this thing. So we work with that life force. We start washing it through different sort of realms and areas. And as you work with this over time, you build the potency of this, right? And that is what I call the energy strength training component is about. And so that's where you essentially use resistance, weights, etc. to load that stretch. But because your mind, your awareness, your attention is on the life force, that weight loads or adds resistance to your connection with the life force. Because under resistance, we contract, right? Under that pressure, we contract. So you train yourself to sustain an open relationship with that energy. So that under greater and greater resistance, that energy, that connection is still there. Okay? So the first couple of days of the workshop coming up in June is devoted to that side of things, that energy strength training. Why that's very valuable for higher meditative practice is, a lot of reasons. One, general health and energy is pretty useful when you want to focus on things. For things like sustaining posture, if you have to use muscular stuff to do that, it's going to be quite trying, right? You'll get a lot of soreness and tension, you want to move around. As you open yourself, you got the cracks, hey? Like your own chiropractor there. So as you strengthen your relationship with the energy, that energy will inflate the tissue and the energy holds you up, right? As opposed to your rigidity of mind or rigidity of squeezing the core and that kind of stuff. That can take you to a certain point, right? But if you're going to sit for 12 hours a day or more, there's a point where you can't hold yourself up that way. You can't do it anymore, and you have to learn, and then you start to figure out other methods of getting things to function. Okay, so that's the energy strength training, and that's where and this moves into the next bit, but that's where like your breathing exercises, that kind of stuff, to really invigorate the tissue when you're breathing, right? You're getting that pull through the fascia, and that's starting to create, like if you have a balloon and you stretch it, right? So you're starting to pump the fascia, the connective tissue, through basic breathing. That starts to pump life force because it's working with the breath. That starts to tap you into the astral side of things, which is when we start to work on the elements. That is moving through that full first week, working through life force, the astral fluid and the elements from that perspective. Within that first week of that level 1 initiation type training, we bring you in through deep equanimity to work with the Akasha principle, right? Or the emptiness underlying form. Underneath the life force, there's this Akashic stuff. Within and underneath the astral stuff, there's this Akashic stuff. Within, underneath, and around the physical stuff, there's this Akashic stuff. So this emptiness that you will start to encounter. At its most universal standpoint, it's pretty bombastic in terms of how much it eradicates form, but it is a necessary doorway to start working with more spiritual types of energy, more refined states of light, etc. These more refined substances. You have to go through that doorway of deep equanimity, deep Akashic relationship in order to work those points, because that is no longer the will of this person, the like three-dimensional you that is, you know, you with all of your history and habits and this, that, the other thing. On the other side of that, I call it like the Akashic bridge, you then have this whole world of things that opens up. Okay, so that is often what is talked about when you have the, whatever, don't know what you call it in yoga, but the caduceus, right? The snakes that meet and become violet, right? That is that entrance point to like violet, you get that violet light, and then that's the doorway into that higher light, okay? So that's basically that whole first week of the training coming up in this sort of like hermetic alchemical type of framework. That's the closest words that I have to describe sort of what I do with like hermetic alchemy, but I try not to let anyone impose restrictions of what they think things mean onto the stuff that we're doing. Then the next training is that level 2. It's the following 9 days, and that's where we get into more elevations, evolutions with the nature connection and nature magic, and working our way through into deity yoga, evocation, and spheric magic, we could call it, connecting with the sun beyond what you feel when you look up at the sun, again through that Akashic principle, connecting with the sun sphere, the moon sphere, and depending on how things go, we might work with some of Mercs and Venus there, again from the energetic standpoint. So that's sort of a little overview, okay?